Hey guys, welcome back to Ironside Rants. I'm sorry we haven't got a video out in the last couple days. I was getting ready to do a bunch of videos there on Wednesday night, and then Chris from over at Financial Fitness, he and I got to talking on the phone, and he wanted to go and do a live chat, so that kind of took my evening. So ended up doing a chat between Chris from Financial Fitness, Nobody Special Financial, and the Economic Ninja. So if y'all have not checked it out, I'll put a link for Chris's channel, Financial Fitness, again down in the description, so y'all can jump over there and take a look at the video and kind of see what was going on, what we were talking about. We talked about everything from fertilizer shortages to food rising to price control coming up here next year. So it's all in there. Now, I will say I am by far the least financially savvy of the three of them, and they just have a world of knowledge. So they kind of asked me on there because I know a little bit about what's going on with the fertilizer, and but those guys have just a world of knowledge financially. So definitely go check them out. Y'all can pick up a lot of information from them. Okay, so let's jump right into this Israel thing. So everybody knows by now, because I missed the boat on getting the video out early. Amanda Lynn had sent this to me right when this was becoming a story, and I didn't get the video out in time, so I ended up watching everybody else posting videos about it. It's like, crap, I kind of missed the boat on it. But whatever, we're going to do a video anyways and show you what's coming on with the bird flu going on over there in Israel. Now, a lot of people are thinking that bird flu is going to result into another pandemic. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why as carefully as I can. I have to be very careful about the way I say this or they'll demonetize me, but when certain political powers are actually holding the purse strings, meaning they have all the government control, certain political parties, the media tends to align with those political parties, and they will not do a story that makes them look bad. Now, conversely, when the coronavirus pandemic hit, we had a political power that was at odds with the media. And when you have that, the media was going to do everything they could to destroy them because they wanted the next candidates and group to come in there to be the saviors. And so I don't think that even if bird flu was worse than the coronavirus, which I don't think that they're going to turn this into the panic. They're going to say, they might say mask up. They are not going to shut down the economy again. I just don't buy it, not for that. Now, whether they do it for coronavirus is a different story. But the one caveat on this is they have kind of created their own monster here, because now they've created so much panic about this. There might be a calling from the general populace to say, hey, we want shutdowns, we want lockdowns, we want mask mandates, and because now that's become the standard, that may change the equation just a little bit, and so you may see a rising from the general population claiming that, hey, this is what we want, but as a general rule, I don't think that the political parties are going to cause any type of panic with this bird flu, even if this breaks out and becomes and does a transmission to human. They gain a function. I don't think that they'll let that be a huge deal for us. Where it becomes a problem is going to be on the poultry side in the U.S. So we're already seeing that Israel is having chickens killed off and having egg production, eggs thrown out, stuff like that, simply because they're worried about this becoming a bigger issue. The way this is going to affect us in the U.S. is going to be have kind of a multi-tiered approach, right? So first thing is where do we get most of our eggs and our meat? Well, we get them from confined area feeding operations, those traditional Tyson-style chicken houses, where they call them, yes, cage-free, but they're really just one big cage for all the chickens. It's still a horrible environment. Those people are going to be affected because their birds are going to have to receive vaccinations for this. If they don't, they'll all get sick and die. They will probably, until the vaccination is developed for it, they will probably get sick and die. And even after the vaccination is developed, as we're seeing, they'll probably get sick and die. So there's going to be some natural loss with this. The small chicken farmers like me and some of the other guys around, we're not going to be affected by it hardly at all unless they make regulations affecting it. Because our chickens, as a general rule, even without vaccinating, they're just healthier. They're raised out on the pasture. We're not introducing other animals because we purchase them all at one time. So we're not introducing more chickens into our flocks. And so it can be very unlikely. And I realize it can be passed from bird up in the sky. Okay, that's not what we're... That's a different discussion on the transmission, the transmissibility of it. But it's because our animals are raised on pasture, they're just a lot healthier. They have a lot better immune systems, and we don't deal with the diseases and stuff that they deal with in commercial chicken operations. If we were to raise our chickens like commercial chicken operations, we would have to give them the vaccines and the antibiotics and everything else that they do in the commercial chicken houses the same way. So it's the reason we don't have to do that is because we're raising them in a healthier environment, and so that's why these bird flus are probably not going to affect the small chicken farmers unless the regulations come in to affect us. That's true with the small egg producers, people that are doing free range pasture raised eggs. That's also true. Now, if they're doing free range, where there's several models of free range eggs. There's a model like what we do, where chickens get rotated around, and they're truly what you would think of as free range. They live their own lives, and they eat bugs and stuff, and they have a great time. There's a model that's in production chicken markets, where basically you have what they call a wheel, and basically you have one chicken house right in the center, and then you have these spokes that come off that are all fencing. And the chickens, in theory, get rotated between those, and it's free-range chickens. The problem is chickens are lazy, and especially domestically raised commercial breed chickens are very lazy. They won't go out very far in that cog. So the end of that wheel always has fresh grass that has to be mowed. The beginning of it, it looks like every chicken house out there, where it's just because there's so much nitrogen on the ground, it's basically burned and it's concrete and has unhealthy soil, so it's not being actually moved correctly. Chickens are just lazy, and that's how they work. And so even though, yes, they're kind of technically free range and they get to have some semblance of an existence, it still doesn't create a healthy atmosphere. They also go back in at night into that house where they're again in cramped, confined spaces, and so they're all together, which is part of the unhealthiness that you get with all these chickens, and that's where you're going to end up with these problems. So even on that scale of things, you're still going to have people having issues with that bird flu coming about. Now, the third part of this, so we have. We talked about how this is going to affect us from small farm standpoint, and the traditional farmer, the old-fashioned farmer. The next part that we want to talk about is how is this going to affect us from a regulatory standpoint, right? So we hit the disease affecting humans. We hit how it's going to affect the chickens. Now let's talk about the regulation, right? That's our third section of this. So the regulation is going to be the big kicker on this, because regulation is always worse than the actual disease. I shouldn't say always, but as the general rule, when the government gets their hands on something, they tend to knee-jerk to the opposite end, and because they're trying to appease the people over here screaming the loudest, and so what we end up getting is we get this stupid knee-jerk reaction. What I can see coming down from regulation is I can see the USDA trying to impose rules that are going to make everybody vaccinate their birds, including small chicken farmers. Now, one thing that poultry has a lot of state exceptions on there, and because poultry, a lot of state exceptions will say that if you raise less than 20,000 birds a year, you fall under these exceptions. So small guys like me may be okay, but certainly anybody raising over 20,000 chickens a year probably going to be hit with a bunch of regulations to vaccinate their birds, regardless of how they're raised, because the USDA doesn't discriminate when they say that these guys are raising in a chicken house versus these guys are raising 100% on pasture. As far as they're concerned, they're chicken's chicken, and so they're going to regulate that all the same. And so you can certainly see some regulation coming down like that. You can also see some regulation of them forcing large chicken houses to stop sales, and which case will force chicken houses to butcher. So the government's not actually going to have them butcher it, but they can slow the sales down, because they can say we're not going to allow this to be sold in stores until we verify that these are free of bird flu. So you're going to see a supply disruption in chicken and eggs. Now, we don't eat a lot of chicken here on our farm, mostly because if we do want chicken, we raise it ourselves. But as a general rule, we have so much pork and beef. It's like, well, why eat chicken? But I realize it's healthy. So we don't eat a ton of chicken. We do like eggs, and we do have our egg chickens out back. Now is the time. If you do not have egg chickens, you do not have backyard chickens, and you want to get some, now's the time to get some and to get started on that. It's very, very easy to do. We have a number of videos talking about this, but we're actually going to break here for just a second. I'm going to take you out to the shop, and I'm going to put like a 3-minute video here at the end of this video to show you guys how to get started with a small brooder house that's very, very cheap, that'll work in subdivisions or wherever you're at, to show you how to do that. So if you want to see that, stick with us here till the end, and we'll go over all the details on how to set up a small brooder house for very, very cheap, about $100 to get you one set up that you can raise your chickens in and get them to a healthy age to get out and start laying some eggs for you. Now, so guys, I guess bottom line is that you want to be self-sufficient, right? That's what this whole channel is about, is self-sufficiency on some level. As much as you can produce between yourself and your local community, that's where we want to be at. You don't want to be relying on, certainly on large producers. You don't want to be relying on the grocery store to get your eggs. Eggs are a baseline staple in our diets. They're a superfood, however that's defined, a superfood, but they have lots of nutrition, lots of protein. They're fairly calorie dense. They can be used in lots of different cooking, because the thing about this is if there's a stop on eggs, that's going to affect our baking products at the store. That's going to affect things like, egg noodles, those weird things that you buy in like Asian cuisine or whatever, or weird things. Shouldn't call them weird, but just different things that we don't typically eat in American culture, but they have their own aisle at the supermarket. Things like that use eggs in them that we don't generally think about as having lots of eggs. We don't think about our bread as having lots of eggs. And I don't know commercial bread, I don't know which brands out there are using eggs versus which ones aren't, but we have some recipes that we bake at home that use eggs and others that don't. Lots of bakeries are going to have problems because they use lots of eggs in there, and it's going to be an issue for them. So if you own a bakery or a business that is dependent on eggs, I highly suggest you start finding a local supplier to get you some eggs. There are, once you start getting the word of mouth out, there are dozens around here that supply eggs reasonably cheap. Actually, I can go buy duck eggs for $4 for a dozen and a half, and there's tons of little industries like this all around. So if your business in any way relies on you having some eggs, now is a good time to get a plan B and actually roll that in to become your plan A. Quit buying this crappy low quality eggs from the grocery stores and from the supply chains. If you want to be able to produce your own eggs, which again, they're a great food because you can make a lot of things with them. They're fairly calorie dense, and they have a lot of nutrition in them. Good homegrown eggs do. Now is the time to be looking at that and looking at how to find a good breed that is that is fairly self-sufficient, right? They can get out there and forage for their own food. Things like Rhode Island Reds are great, but they don't produce that many eggs when they don't have commercial chicken feed. So there's other options to look out there and see about. Things like a Silky, they do really well. You can let them forage. They're great foragers, but they also will produce a decent amount of eggs on low quality forage. So you just want to look out there and check out those breeds. So I think that's about it, guys. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and hang this up here, but if you wait till after the little credit scene that I always put at the end, we're going to go out to the chicken coop. I'll show you a 3-minute video on how to set up a brooder, so that way you guys know, and if you guys are interested in getting a chicken coop set up at your house, this is how to kind of get started on that. And so we'll touch all the details here. If you're not interested in that, we'll catch you all in the next video. Thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Guys, so let's talk about a real quick chicken brooder, and what the point of the chicken brooder is basically to get the chicken started until you can get them out in the coop and out on their own, because they're very delicate for the first couple of weeks of their life. And so you're going to keep them in something that's fairly well contained for the first few weeks. There's different arguments on how long you have to keep them there. The general rule, about 3 to 4 weeks is how long you're going to keep them there. But again, there's different discussions on that. Until they have feathers, when they're fully clothed in feathers, they're perfectly safe to go out on their own, even though they're not fully grown yet. Now, the other thing that we're trying to do with this is we're trying to make sure that this is cheap, right? Because we only use it a couple times. We want it to be functional, and we want it to work over and over again. But they take up room, and we don't want to spend a bunch of money on them. You can build something like this out of plywood or something like that, but that takes a lot more time. And so I don't know about y'all, I don't have much time, so I gotta be fairly useful with what I've got. You can pick up an IBC tote, something like this, for about $45, 45 to 55 bucks. At the high end, you'd pay $100, but I buy these for about $45 from a guy here local. If you don't know where to find them, you can look on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. They're fairly easy to find on those. Any farmers forums, they'll have them all over the place. Or you can just go to like local car washes, because this is what their soap and stuff comes in. You can find them like that. You want to obviously find one that's not been used for any type of oil products or anything like that, but you can clean them out and you don't have to worry about too much with them as long as it's not something that's very caustic or dangerous that was in there. Now we cut the tops off of them. I cut them down because remember they're about that high. I do cut them down a little bit so they're easier to get into, and so I cut the first row off of them and then re-secure the horizontal bars in here. But these work really well. I can fill these up to here with sawdust or whatever my medium is, so I can raise lots of different chickens, and then this is great compost for the garden. As far as the top goes, you have a number of options. This is just dog wire. This is what I have laying around. A better option would be something like 1-inch squared hardware cloth. Again, if you have a big problem with rats, you'll have to be a little bit more anal about how you do this. But if you're not having too big a problem with rats, then this is not going to keep rats out. But so we may end up adding something to this, but that tends to be your biggest issue is rats and disease when it comes to chickens. So if you don't have a huge problem with rats, then don't worry about it. Other than that, you just want to be able to keep the barn cat out of it. Being able to lift up on it and get all in here, we do want to be able to get down in here because you are going to have to clean this out. So you do want enough area that you can get down in there and get a shovel down there to clean that all out. Now you need a heat light, or you can see right here we got a heat light, or they make mats that go on the ground that will heat it. If you're only using this once or twice, there's no need to go crazy with buying the highest end waterers and feeders. I mean, bowls and leftover Tupperware works just fine too. If you're a commercial chicken operation, yeah, buy the nicer stuff. But even for the amount of chickens that we produce them right in here. I've got another IBC tote that we'll hook up to the side on it, and we've got a little tube that connects them to each other so the chickens can go back and forth. But and that allows us to do several hundred at a time. Guys, I hope that answers that. I'm sorry, this went on a little bit longer than I wanted. So this should hopefully give you some information on how we get our chicken started. So if you're looking at starting something, this is the brooder house to set up. Very cheap, very easy to do, and can be done in a garage, a little bit of space, and then the chickens can be raised in your backyard.